Hey, what's going on, guys? So I actually started installing this hydro late last night. So unfortunately I didn't really get a chance to film. I have a couple pictures that I might include in the video, I might not. But essentially I ordered the Drift HQ hydro handle with the universal kit. I've been working on this for maybe like 4 hours last night, taking my time, and then I came up this morning and I'm going to show you guys where I'm at. I'm going to walk you through what I did last night, just to hopefully make this process a little bit easier for you, as there was a couple things that there's no instructions that they include. There's no instructions on the website. Unfortunately, this is over the weekend, so they are closed, so I didn't reach out or anything to talk to them. When I ordered the kit, I ordered it over the phone though, and they were super helpful, so shout out to Drift HQ for that. Full disclosure, I paid for everything myself with my own money. No kind of affiliation with Drift HQ at the time being, but just wanted to kind of post up a nice video for the 350Z because there's really not much out there. Okay, so I did take some of the stuff apart, like I said, but I'm going to pretty much walk you through from the start. Like, let's just say you get in your car, everything's completely stock, and you're going to install a hydro now. So you're going to start off with removing your center console. You have a bolt that sits right here, and on this side, exactly the same side, another, it's going to be a Phillips head screw. Just for a little bit of a reference, they're pretty much right here and here. Next, you're going to have another Phillips head screw here. You're going to take your shift knob off first, and then you're going to grab your shifter with your AC controls. There's tons of videos on YouTube of people pulling this off. You're just going to kind of grab right here and pull up, and then it's going to hook in up in the front. You're going to have another Phillips here and another Phillips here. Pull up the handbrake, and then you should be able to maneuver the center console out. And then you have one connector that connects to this harness right here. That's pretty much going to be getting the center console out. Next, you're going to want to, you have a stock ring right here for the trans tunnel. You're going to take that ring out. We got 4 10 mils here. And after that, I have a I think it's called Low Concept Z or something like that. If I'm wrong on what it's called, I'll correct that. But went ahead and got this universal bracket, universal mount bracket. You kind of pick where you want to mount it. Put the bolts back in, take that old ring out, put this in, put the bolts back in. And then I just drilled, pretty much figured out where I wanted the hydro to be located. And then I went ahead and just drilled with made little reference marks with a Sharpie, and then just drilled holes through it. And then on the bottom here, it's got some nuts, so it is just nut and bolted on. Went ahead and mounted that. Now step number 2 is going to be coming back. You're going to want to remove your caliper. You have a slide bolt here and then another slide bolt right here. Then you have a bracket bolt right here, and then there's another one right there. So you're going to take off the caliper. After that, you're going to remove your rotor. You're gonna have your parking brake shoes, which I did not put back in, and the dust shields I was originally going to, and my cut wheel bit broke, and it was late last night, and I just kind of wanted to get it in. So you're gonna have your parking brake shoes. Unfortunately, again, I wasn't able to record this, but there are a bunch of videos on YouTube on how to take these off. Essentially, you have a spring clip that's going to sit like right here. You're going to want to get some needle nose pliers, and obviously be careful that you don't slip and stab yourself. But you're going to pull that spring off. Then you're going to have a I believe it's a flathead with a little spring. You're going to push that in, quarter turn, one on this side, push that in, quarter turn. Then you can kind of separate that and get that parking brake shoe out. Then there's that little pivot mechanism on the bottom, which is going to be this guy right here. And then you have a little pin that holds everything together. That's going to be right here. You're just going to remove that pin. Good morning, how are you? Oh, doggy, look at the dog. So you have the line. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my camera angle there. So this is going to be for your stock handbrake. You're going to remove this bolt, and then you have this bracket here. And then you're going to come down. You're going to loosen all of your axle shaft nuts. There's going to be like a bolt, a nut, and then a lock washer. Just pay attention to how that came off, because that's how you're going to put it back together. Unless you did something like I did FDF axle spacers, which I do recommend 100% if you're installing a bolt-on dual caliper bracket, as you're going to be spacing away the wheel bearing further away, so this takes up that slack. This is pretty much crucial if you don't want to break axles and you want to keep your setup reliable. I know a lot of people don't do it, but I think it's definitely worth it. Axles are not cheap. I think it was like $100 for the FDF axle spacers, so do recommend that. Then you're gonna loosen out your axle. I just used a socket that was pretty much a little bit smaller than this, and I just hammered it out, tapped it out. Was able to get that low enough to take the axle out completely, and then you have 4 bolts in the back that bolt up your wheel bearing. Okay, then pretty much what you're gonna do is pop off your dust shield. I'm really sorry I didn't record all this last night. It would have been so much easier. It was just really dark. But you're gonna take off the dust shield. You're going to grab, you can kind of see how I have this. This is gonna be your dual caliper bracket, right? I'm gonna put that back in. There's a bunch of supplied bolts that aren't labeled. Okay, so just kind of use common sense with this, guys. If there's 8 bolts, right? Those are gonna probably be for your wheel bearing, 4 for each side. So they're gonna be a little bit longer than the factory ones. This is gonna take up that slack. If you have any questions on which bolts they are, feel free to ask me. Took a little bit of time just to lay everything out and figure it out, but it's really not that difficult. But yeah, there should be 8 of the wheel bearing bolts, and they're longer than the factory ones. You do not wanna try to thread in anything that's shorter. You can match up the bolts, make sure that the thread pitch is right. After that, we're gonna bolt the caliper back on. I'm running stock calipers, so my spacer was the smallest spacer. Gonna put those spacers back in, and then I removed the little washer that was on the back of the caliper bracket bolt, just because I wanted more thread engagement. So put those back in. And I like to mark everything once I tighten it, especially being a drift car, nut and bolt check everything super quick, just by looking at the paint marks. So would recommend doing that. Same thing going on here. This side, you do not need any spacers for your standalone dual caliper. I went with EBC yellow stuff pads. These are gonna bite up really well for a drift car. So up to you what kind of pads you want to go to. Rotors don't really matter. AutoZone rotors or old rotors that you have already, as long as they're not pulsating or, like, you know, destroyed. These aren't too bad. They're just super rusty. And that should pretty much be the installation of the dual caliper bracket itself. Forgot to mention, this is a 32 millimeter 6-point, and there is a cotter pin in here that you need to remove. I'm gonna reuse mine because mine aren't really that bad, but I would recommend getting new cotter pins. Take them out, bring them to AutoZone or a hardware store or something like that, and match them up. Or you can just buy like a kit that has a bunch of cotter pins in. It's really up to you. So we're gonna bench bleed the hydro first before we install the cables that are gonna run back to the calipers. This is gonna ensure that you have no air in this front section. This is actually a really important step, and it makes bleeding later a whole lot easier. You're just gonna fill up the reservoir. Pretty much when you operate the lever, you're gonna have the fluid level rise and drop back down. You're gonna have to keep topping off. Make sure you keep topping off so you don't let air back in the system. If if you let air back in the system, you're essentially just going to be chasing your tail around and around and around. So make sure you keep topping off the reservoir. You want to do nice slow pulls on the hydro. You can do a couple quick pulls too, but you pretty much just want to see no more air coming out of this reservoir. I ended up taking out this little fitting that goes into the Willwood reservoir. I grabbed the eyelet that the banjo bolt goes through, used the 2 included copper washers, copper crush washers. You want to get this kind of installed by hand, figure out how you want to get your routing. Same thing with the long line. This is the long line that comes in the Drift HQ universal kit. And then I pretty much used the stock mount for the handbrake. I went to Ace Hardware and I just got some of these little like rubber insulated eyelet connectors, or whatever you would call these, not entirely sure. And then I made sure that I filed this down so there's no sharp edges, even though this line's not really coming in contact. You know, drifting and stuff like that, things move around. So I would definitely recommend just taking a little bit of extra time and just making sure that this is a nice smooth surface. I might even go ahead and put some felt tape on there. Okay, so what I did is I popped this panel off here. It hooks in on the bottom. You just get like a little bit like of a bone tool, like this guy right here, and you're just gonna wedge it in between there, pry out, and then hooks in the bottom. Just be careful, this is plastic, you can break it. I went and I drilled a hole. You can see that grommet there. I went through the existing hole here, drilled another hole here. I used this existing grommet to run it down to the driver rear. You can see the line comes out right here above the subframe. I'm probably going to figure out what I'm going to zip tie that to. Unfortunately, the Drift HQ hydro line kit does not come with the rear brake lines. This is not something that I was aware of. I'm a little disappointed, to be honest with you. But I'm fortunate enough to have a couple auto parts store within a 10-mile radius, so I'm going to do some driving around, see if I can source some brake lines, or brake hoses, I'm sorry. Now, I drilled a really small hole here. Okay. Now, I got this grommet set from Amazon. I think it was like $10 or something like that, maybe like 15. Anyway, using those grommets, I drilled a hole there. If you decide to use the same location, just be careful. You have a line that runs down here. Probably going to zip tie to this line, get the brake hoses in, figure out how I'm going to mount it, and then that will run to this caliper. So for drilling, I'm just using a step bit on my drill. This was on Amazon as well, fairly cheap. I think this was also like $15 or something like that. And then any drill will work. I also want to note, when you're installing all this, just make it hand tight. You don't need to sit there and crank them until you figure out your routing, just in case you have to come on and off. You don't really want to chew these up at all. Just do hand tight for now. You can always come back later and tighten them up. Obviously, just make sure you tighten everything up. But we're gonna get those brake hoses, and I'll talk to you guys after we get that done. No, just do up and down. That's how I've been recording. You're recording? Okay.
Hold on.
Like I'm trying to show what I'm doing. Just want to wrap everything in Teflon tape, just so you have like a good seal. You don't have to go crazy with it. Just a couple wraps, and then just kind of rip it. It's pretty much all you need. I'm kind of doing probably like 3 or 4 full wraps around the threads here. Now with your Teflon, you don't want it to be on this surface here. You just want it to be on the threads. All right, so I just came back from Napa and we got the stock brake line. Sourcing these banjo bolts was an absolute nightmare. So It's not like you're just going to be able to go to the parts store and just pick up these banjo bolts. Unfortunately, my power stop calipers that I picked up from Rock Auto did not come with banjo bolts. So the lines did come with the copper washers. You do need the copper washers on both sides as shown. This is going to create a good seal. Back to the Teflon tape subject, I did not put Teflon tape on my banjo bolts. I do not recommend putting Teflon tape on the banjo bolts, just on like where your lines are going to connect. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is going to be the factory line. Up here I have the line coming out of the car for the hydro. I'm going to coat this fitting right here. This comes with the Drift HQ package. This side, the thicker side, is going to go into the factory hose, and then this side is going to go back into the Drift HQ line. All right, so it's really important to make sure that your brake lines have clearance for the wheels. Obviously, put your wheels on, make sure that nothing's rubbing. I already kind of know where I need to be. I went ahead down here and I just kind of secured this to the subframe with some zip ties. I would like to figure out a better solution for this, but for now, this is what I'm gonna do. I've had stuff zip tied to the subframe and I haven't had any kind of issues before. I also, on the inside of the car, moved these eyelets around. I use the same 2 spots. This is right above the subframe. If you kind of copy the area that I did this, just obviously make sure you're in the same spot. This is above the subframe. You are not really going to run into any issues. So you can see I did that, and then again, temporarily, I am just zip tying this up. I'll probably get some more of these eyelets and just make it look a little bit nicer. It's important to make sure that you have clearance when the suspension compresses. So we're going to go down here. We're going to use this as a jack point. Make sure you do not hit your lower arm. If you do, I guess it's really not the end of the world, but I would rather be on the knuckle itself rather than jacking up from the arm. So if you're on jack stands, just be careful here, as you are going to raise the car up a little bit above the jack stand. So I just came off of that jack stand on the other side. You can see just off of it. So that's going to be the suspension fully compressed. We can see here we are a little bit tight, but we still have some slack. I'd honestly prefer to be a little bit tight here, just because these rear wheels aren't really going to be moving too much, like as in toe moving, adjusting. Everything's pretty solid. If we have more wiggle room, could start rubbing here. So I'm probably going to leave this like this. Pretty happy with it, and now we just have to bleed everything up. Alright, we just got finished bleeding everything. This is the final product. Went ahead and removed the shifter boot just so I had room to put in the line to the hydro. I also did some trimming to make this bracket fit. Everything is still going to be fully functional. We still have our factory center console in. I think it came out pretty good. Let me know what you guys think. So if you like videos like this, please drop a like, comment, subscribe. Pretty much just starting off here. I'm going to be doing a lot this season. Just got a full order of like 10 tires in. I got a bunch of other tires sitting around. Going to be a lot on the channel. I'm going to try to be as consistent as possible. I do want to get a better camera set up. This was actually recorded on my phone. Planning on getting a GoPro in the near future. using like a cheap knockoff one for my face cam videos. If you check out my Instagram at Obry Motorsports, you can see some of those videos. I also do some photography and some other stuff too while I'm at the shows or events. So if you're into stuff like that, feel free to check me out at Obry Motorsports. Thanks for watching.